Howdy, 10 Tampa Bay Chief Meteorologist Bobby Deskins here. You are looking at the very latest in the tropics. It's been a while. Good to see everybody out there. Looks like my camera's not working the best right now, but hopefully you can hear me just okay. We'll go over to the graphics anyways. This is the very latest for Tropical Depression 3. You can see it's the front runner out there. There is a second wave, 93L, that only has about a 40% chance of developing. And there's actually even a third wave. If you see what's coming off of Africa, we'll have to watch that. But the tropics certainly are heating up, and definitely a lot to talk about. I'll go over this. There's a lot going on with the way the atmosphere is right now. Let me make sure I got everything in here. I'm not going to have everything in here. So I'm going to turn a couple things on. But bottom line is, guys, this is rare for this to be happening in this location this time of the year. We typically don't see things that far in the Atlantic until almost August. So let's go back to it so you can see it here. This is the bigger picture. Now, this has been 92L. We don't want that yet. This is 92L. And so over the last couple of days, it has been drifting off towards the west. And seriously, in the last 24 hours, it really started to take much better shape. So let's zoom in on that. This is the visible satellite for today. Much better looking system, very organized, or getting that way at least. So winds right now are at 35 miles per hour. It's moving to the west at 21 miles per hour. That's pretty quick. And pressure is about 1,009 millibars. Should get another update, I'd say, at 5 o'clock this afternoon. And at that time, might end up with a tropical storm. If so, the next name on the list is Bret. It looks like we're going to get that tonight. Sometime tonight, and then the Hurricane Center forecast certainly gets it to tropical storm form strength by tomorrow morning with 50-mile-per-hour winds, as you can see there. And then look at that. We've got a hurricane on our hands likely during the day on Wednesday afternoon. A hurricane there. You can see by Thursday morning, 80-mile-per-hour winds. Remember, hurricane is 74-mile-per-hour winds or higher. Now, that is not far north of Barbados, for the northeast islands there, Thursday night, Friday morning with the storm coming through. Now, not terrible, 70 to 80 mile per hour winds is what the forecast is now, but this forecast is going to change a little bit, and some of the modeling is even suggesting that it might come up a little bit north of the center of this cone at this point, which would actually be good news because then that would spare more islands, and that would eventually spare Puerto Rico a little bit more. Right now, the Hurricane Center has it south of Puerto Rico, really affecting Puerto Rico by Friday night and Saturday morning, but falling apart a little bit as it does so. So here's the forecast models on it. You can see there are generally a couple different ways of thinking here, right? A stronger system will recurve. A weaker system will go further off towards the west. And I think the models are back and forth on all of this. There is some shear in here, and I'll show you that coming up. There's going to be some right in here. So if it doesn't recurve, it's going to get into that shear, and that's going to weaken it, and it would argue for it to go further off towards the west. And that's pretty typical. Weaker, wester, stronger, will turn to the north. That's just how these systems are, especially when you're talking about the upper level wind steering it. Now, this is the GFS model, and you can see right here is where it is on Wednesday. All right, so likely hurricane force strength somewhere around this time frame on Wednesday. Let's go out to Friday night into Saturday morning. There it is near the northeast Leeward Islands, right? And then you've got, I think, a little pull coming up here. So watch what happens during the day. Look at that. See that? Saturday and Sunday, it just kind of skirted off to the northwest, and eventually we'll try and do a recurve. Now, this is the GFS model's version of it, okay? It has a stronger version of it. It actually really cranks it up as it gets out here southeast of Bermuda. That, by the way, would be a swell maker for the East Coast, which surfers won't mind. But then here's the GFS model, the European model, and it's got a much weaker system further to the south. There's Barbados right there. This is the front runner. That would be Bret. There's the second system, right, 93L. Now let's go out. I'm going to stop this Friday. It's got the first one. It's got Bret or whatever is in here. Very weak, very disorganized, and in the Southern Caribbean, just marching westward. And that would argue that it just doesn't see much to it. It still has this one closed off pretty well. Now let's go out a little bit later, and you can see it too is trying to lose whatever that one is. and then take it off to the north and the east as well. So if you're in Florida right now, I'm not too concerned about any of these. You have to watch them always, but it looks like it's trying to recurve more than anything else, and even if it doesn't, it would be very, very weak. So here are the two systems. Again, it's almost getting a little confusing because this is Tropical Depression 3 out here. This is 93L, and there's another wave coming off that some of the models are picking up on as well too. Now here's the GFS model. I want to talk about that second wave, 93L. You can see the first one, right? Still a decent little storm coming inshore for the Northeast Islands. There's the second one. All right, now watch that second one as we go through Saturday into Sunday. You see what's happened? The first one's come up here. The second one's coming up behind it, gaining latitude at the same time. So that keeps it well east of the islands. And more than anything else, you see this is a big ridge sitting out here. The center's actually up here somewhere. But that thing's backing down, and it's opening the door for this to come up. Now, this is the GFS model, and we're looking at mid-levels of the atmosphere. But that's kind of part of the steering that we're looking at here. So not too much of a concern at this particular point. Why is this happening this time of year? Excuse me. So what we've been talking about this year is El Nino, El Nino, El Nino. And El Nino gives us lots of wind shear. And wind shear can shear apart storms. So that's a good thing if you don't want hurricanes. But we've also been talking about this very warm water. And what you're looking at here is the sea surface temp anomaly. So how much warmer or cooler than average is the water? And not just out here in the central Atlantic, but I mean, basically the whole main development region is very, very warm compared to average, and certainly warmer than average out here. So you've got warm enough water out here as well to make the storms. And this is fuel for the fire, right? This is like gasoline for a fire. So if you had this and no wind, you'd get storms. And guess what? We have that and not much wind, at least not right yet, okay? This is where we normally look for the month of June. The Western Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, west of Florida, where things moving out to the north and the east. That's it, right? That is it. We don't look for much this time of the year further off towards the east. But as the season goes on, as the water warms up, we start to look a little further to the east. So you can see here we are now. We're still looking in the Gulf of Mexico for July. But we also start looking in the Bahamas, just off the Carolinas. And then we start looking in the central and eastern Caribbean, right? But still, this is July, right? This is not August. And look at August. August 1st, especially statistically, is when the numbers start going up overall. And so that's why you see the yellow shading there. But I mean, look, we're still looking in this area here. This storm is forming out here. Late August, we'd be looking at there. Now, look at September. September is when we're looking for these types of tracks. So this is very rare. It happens, but it's very rare that this occurs, formation this early, that far out to the east, out in the central Atlantic. Now, you're going to hear a lot of stuff about people saying, wow, not only one, but two, but three. And to me, that's not a big of a deal. I mean, the big deal is that we have one of any, right, forming out here. What happens is when you get a lot of lift in the atmosphere, which we have out there now, you have low wind shear, which we have out there now, and you don't have a lot of dust, which is actually lower than normal. For at least a week or week and a half or so, that type of pattern can persist, not just out here, but anywhere. And that pattern is what's set up right here. So just because we have 3 potential waves, 2 really good ones, doesn't mean like this is really crazy. It is really crazy that it's happening this early. Seeing number 2 and potentially number 3, to me, is not that big of a deal. That's what I would expect, right? If you're going to pop anything that far out there and you've got a couple more waves coming off the African wave train, of course you expect them to try and do something. They're not really going to get everything out of them. But yeah, the conditions are right. You've already made one, so why would you not expect, if you've got more waves coming off of Africa, why would you not expect a chance for another one? And we can see 3 waves. Currently, TD3 is the front-running wave. So yes, very rare for where it is for this time of the year. I'm not freaking out too much about the fact that there's 2 or 3 of them out there. That just makes sense with the pattern. October, look what happens. We stop looking. So this is basically a September-like storm. October, we start looking closer to the United States again, and you can see by November. And once we get past Halloween's kind of my rule, we can still get storms in November. And you can see where we're looking where the water's warmer. Now think about November, right? You end up with cooler fronts trying to make it down here, and storms would come up and go out, right? That makes sense. Okay, now let's talk wind shear. Look where the storms are, right here and right there. The 93L, not a storm, right? But that's our depression. And then you see the other wave coming off of Africa right here, okay? The shear's to the north of this. In fact, it's in the spot where it actually will vent these storms a little bit. So that's a good thing for making storms. Look at all this shear over here. You see all that? Now, if that were to stay put and this were to come into the Caribbean, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to run right into that shear and it will fall apart. Now, I don't think it's going to completely stay put. I think there's going to be some changes, and I'll show you that. But you can see all the wind shear in the Gulf of Mexico and in most of the Caribbean at this particular time. This is what we want. This is El Nino, basically, right? A storm track pretty far to the south there. Those winds higher further to the south. So here's the wind shear forecast. It's all about, you know, what's going to be when it gets there. You can see the model. This is the GFS. Pretty good job of initializing where the shear is here and to the north of the storm. So I'm buying that. That's good. Now let's go out to the middle, I think Thursday, Wednesday night, Thursday. And still some shear to the north, a little bit here on the north side of this. And it's a northerly shear, so some of this might get blown off to the south. And then watch as we get it into Thursday and Friday, the islands there. And now you've got some pretty good northerly shear here. So it's still, again, to the north, but it's really getting closer to it. And so that's going to kind of try and weaken this thing a little bit. And that's as far as the Hurricane Center forecast goes. But notice we've got another big trough dipping down here and coming up. So that if anything did try and just come up at Florida or even the Bahamas, it's going to get blown apart, especially Florida. So I'm just not too worried right now about Florida. Likely this is, you know, this could end up with like the European scene and going further off towards the south. All right, guys, that is it. Let me bring you back here one more time and show you a last look at the tracker. We'll get another update. We'll get another update as we get going into 5 o'clock this afternoon with the forecast track, intensity, the whole 9 yards. But that will be continuing to push further to the west-northwest and strengthen over the next 24 to 48 hours, in fact. So I do expect us to get tropical storm out of this later tonight and hurricane during the day. What do they say? I still think it's during the day on Wednesday. Yeah, so tropical storm all day tomorrow. But that's it. If you've got friends or family that have concerns, if you've got family members, friends in the Lesser Antilles, especially the Northeast Islands there, I want to give them a heads up. Barbados, the bet is for me that Barbados, the worst of this will go to the north. Highest winds will likely be up at the northeast quadrant anyways. But certainly some gusty squalls coming through the islands, especially Thursday and Friday of this upcoming week. Okay, guys, that's it. Thank you for watching today. I hope you have a great day. I'll be live at 5 o'clock on 10 Tampa Bay. Don't forget my YouTube page, Bobby Deskins Weather, Facebook page there as well, too. Have a good one.